G'day mates. Before I start this video, I just wanted to give a viewer's discretion warning for some of the stories. Hospital stories, as you can imagine, can be quite graphic at times. As such, some of the stories in this video are a bit gory. I'm providing a viewer's discretion warning here for anyone who may find these types of stories a little hard to stomach. And with this said, I hope you enjoy the video, and let's begin. Number 6. I've worked in a group home for 5 years now, and nothing will ever beat my first day on the job. I was 19 and hadn't had much training yet. I was doing it overnight, but my resident was refusing to go to sleep. The man was a 6'5" beast, weighing in at almost 300 pounds. He was missing an eye. He had put a pencil in it because the voices told him to, and his face was disfigured from a fire. He had multiple personalities and often switched from normal to a fighter pilot dropping bombs on those damn Japs in a matter of minutes. The first night I worked, he sat naked in his room most of the night making bomb noises and yelling about Japs. He got quiet for a while and I started to drift to sleep. I suddenly wake up when I hear heavy breathing above me. It's my client, naked, holding a pudding cup. He looks me right in the eye and says,
"You fall asleep again and I'm going to kill you."
He then sat in a chair in the living room watching me until my relief came at 8 AM. And in case anyone was wondering, this is a facility where the overnight staff are expected to sleep. I got paid minimum wage to do this shit. Number 5. One of my very best friends worked at one of the state hospitals here in California, and he told me a few that stuck out. Once, a client wasn't cooperating, they were trying to restrain him. A number of the workers were attempting to hold him down. One of them had their hand on his chest. The guy lowered his head, bit off a part of the worker's finger, showed it to him on the tip of his tongue, and then swallowed it. Another had to wear a specially made helmet because he had a tendency to poke his finger in one of his eyes. He had done this so often that either he had pushed it up into his skull or it had been removed. On days that this client was well behaved, the staff would take the helmet off of him. One day, my buddy was watching him as he was playing a game with another client. He was losing and kept on getting more and more frustrated. When he finally lost, he started breathing really hard, and then, all of a sudden, he jams his finger as far as he can into his eye socket. The story that I found creepiest was after he was transferred to the more high-functioning area that was referred to as behind the fence. These were the guys that had committed some kind of crime and were eventually found to be criminally insane. Most of the guys there were guys that got caught up in gangs and tried to fight him any chance they had. There was one client there that was extremely nice to him though. He described this guy as small, sweet, and a white guy. He said that he was amazed at how different this guy seemed to be and he constantly wondered what he did to land in a mental hospital. Finally, one day, one of the staff members that had been there for years was working with him and he decided to ask about this guy. The staff member tells him that this guy got into a fight with his roommate, killed him, cut him up, and placed him in a gym bag that he kept under his bed for a pretty long stretch of time. Number 4. I worked at a hospital doing transport for a couple of years. The transport home base was in the basement of the hospital where all the laundry is done and supplies are also sorted there. I hated working late nights after this incident. On this particular night, I was the only one in the basement when I heard whistling at the end of the hallway by the elevator. I poked my head around the corner expecting to see my only co-worker on duty that night, but there was absolutely no one there. I shrugged it off. I'm not easily spooked. Nights are slow, so I ate some snacks and hung out in the break room for a bit. The next thing I know though, I hear a loud bang. I walked into the hallway and a bed is rolling down the hall, bumping into the sides. At this point, I think that my co-worker is bullshitting me. I radio him and he says he's upstairs in the cafeteria. I still don't believe him and think I'll catch him in the act. I walk past the laundry room and the machines start. I pop my head in there expecting to find him, but it's completely empty. Okay, I'm starting to get a little nervous now. I walk into the laundry room and the machines completely stop. I freeze, then run out and head towards the elevator where I hear whistling again. At this point, I know I am the only worker in the basement. As I am standing there waiting for the elevator, things start falling off the shelves down the hall. Boxes of gloves, tissues, packages of tubes. I am literally standing there watching them fall off one by one at the opposite end of the hallway. I shit you not, my entire body broke out in goosebumps. My hair stood on end and I had this strong gut feeling I was being watched. And I wasn't alone. As I'm getting into the elevator, I feel what feels like someone brushing my arm. I went upstairs and found my co-worker in the cafeteria, and I freaked out to him. I got the fuck out of there and transferred soon after that. The creepy thing to add to it is that I usually whistle mindlessly to myself at work. It was almost as if the spirit, or whatever the hell it was mimicking me. It was the creepiest feeling ever.
Number 3.
Well, after spending some time on a psych floor, I've seen some shit. I was a patient. The worst was after the nightly movie held in the cafeteria. 3 of us walked past the TV room with a nurse. Another patient was in there, and the nurse popped her head in to see who it was. The woman in the room was scratching the plexiglass box that the TV was enclosed in. The room was pitch black. The nurse asked if she needed help. The woman just kept scratching though. We had all walked into the room at this point, watching the woman scratch furiously at the plexiglass. The nurse asked again if she needed help, and the woman started screaming in some language that was clearly not English or Spanish, and scratching the plexiglass to the point where her hand was bleeding. The nurse started calling for assistance and trying to get the 3 of us out of the room when the woman turned towards us and screamed,
He's coming to eat your entrails tonight. All of you. He's going to roast your skin over his fires.
Well, I noped it out of there and ran to the nurse's station. The other 2 patients split for their rooms and the whole barrage of staff run into the TV room to restrain the woman. I was so worked up I practically begged the nurses to put me on a quarter 5. That's a check every 5 minutes by a staff member. I was on a quarter 30 at that point in my stay just to make sure I wasn't self-harming. They tried to calm me down and told me that the woman was having her meds adjusted and being transferred off the floor. I didn't see her again for the rest of my visit, but then again, it was a psych ward. There were a lot of patients who just sat in their beds, staring at nothing.
Number 2.
As a paramedic, I responded to a call of a traffic accident, baby ejected. We prepared for the worst we could imagine. I arrive in about 8 minutes, and trooper on the scene is trying to clean in the area of the bystanders and the gawkers and preserve the scene. He'd covered the baby with the yellow death sheet troopers carry in their trunks. I lifted the sheet to check vitals and pronounce death, and it was not a baby. It was the top half of the 19-year-old girl that was driving the small pickup truck about 50 yards away. She was driving and arguing with her 19-year-old husband, who was the passenger. They were doing about 55 miles per hour on a 2-lane road and met an oncoming truck pulling a double-wide mobile home. She ran under the front corner of the mobile home, cutting her in half. Her bottom half remained in the driver's seat while her unhurt husband watched as the truck skidded another 50 to 60 yards, sideswiping a minivan, sending it into the ditch upside down. When the truck came to rest, her bottom half fell out on the ground. We also found a trail of ribs from the cab to the bed, and down the pavement to the top half. It looked like a movie set. Her top and bottom looked unhurt, but from mid-chest to about pelvis was strung along the road. The husband was absolutely freaking out about what he had just seen. He was babbling incoherently, running around, swinging at people, just a mess. A witness who lived right in front of the scene started having chest pains and had to be transported. We took the husband and I called a medical control and actually got orders to give him an IV Valium, something paramedics normally can only give for grand mal seizures. The driver of the big truck was fine, but was also very, very distraught at what he had just witnessed. That was 16 years ago, and I can still remember pulling up at the scene like it was yesterday.
Number 1.
OR nurse here. This is kind of a long one. I was taking a call one night and woke up at 2 in the morning for a general surgery call. It was pretty vague, but at the time I lived in a town that had large populations of young military guys and avid meth users, so late night emergencies were common. I got to the hospital where a few more details awaited me. Perirectal abscess. For the uninitiated, this means that somewhere in the immediate vicinity of the arsehole there was a pocket of pus that needed draining. Needless to say, our entire crew was less than thrilled. I went down to the emergency room to transport the patient, and the only thing the ER nurse said as she handed me the chart was, "Have fun with this one." Amongst healthcare professionals, vague statements like that are a bad sign. My patient was a 314-pound Native American woman who barely fit on the stretcher I was transporting her on. She was rolling frantically side to side, moaning in pain, pulling at her clothes and muttering Hail Marys. I could barely get her name out of her after a few minutes of questioning, so after I confirmed her identity and what we were working on, I figured it was best just to get her to an anesthesiologist so we could knock her out and get this circus started. She continued her theatrics the entire 10-minute ride to the OR, nearly falling off the surgical table as we were trying to put her under anesthetic. We see patients like this a lot, though, chronic drug abusers who don't handle pain well and who have used so many drugs that even encased levels of pain medication don't touch simply because of high tolerance levels. It should be noted, tonight's surgical team was not exactly wet behind the ears. I'd been working in healthcare for several years already, mostly psych and medical settings. I've watched an 88-year-old man tear a 1-diameter catheter balloon out of his penis while screaming, "You'll never make me talk." I've been attacked by an HIV-positive neo-Nazi, and I've seen some shit. The other nurse had been in the OR as a trauma specialist for over 10 years. The anesthesiologist had done residency at a level 1 trauma center, or as we call them, knife and gun clubs. The surgeon was ex-army and averaged about 8 words and 2 facial expressions a week. None of us expected what was about to happen next. We got the lady off to sleep and put her into stirrups. I began washing off the rectal area. It was red and inflamed, and a little bit of pus was seeping through, but it was all pretty standard. Her chart had noted that she'd been injecting IV drugs through her perineum, so this was obviously an infection from dirty needles or bad drugs. But overall, it didn't seem to warrant her repeated cries of, "Oh shit, kill me now." The surgeon steps up with a scalpel and sinks just the tip in, and at the exact same moment the patient had a muscle twitch in her diaphragm, and just like that, all hell broke loose. Unbeknownst to us, the infection had actually tunneled nearly a foot into her abdomen, creating a vast cavern full of pus, rotten tissue, and fecal matter that had seeped outside of her colon. This godforsaken mixture came rocketing out of that little incision like we were recreating the funeral scene from Jane Austen's Mafia. We all wear waterproof gowns, face masks, gloves, hats, the works, all of which were as helpful as rain boots against a fire hose. The bed was in the middle of the room, an easy 7 feet from the nearest wall. But by the time we were done, I was still finding bits of rotten flesh pasted against the back wall. As the surgeon continued to advance his blade, the torrent just continued. The patient kept seizing against the ventilator, not uncommon in surgery, and with every muscle contraction, she shot more of this blackish grey-brown fluid out onto the floor until, within minutes, it was seeping into the other nurse's shoes. I was nearly 12 feet away, jaw dropped open with my surgical mask, watching the second nurse dry heaving and the surgeon standing on tippy toes to keep his stuff from soaking his socks any further. The smell hit them first. Oh shit, I just threw up in my mask. The other nurse was out. She tore off her mask and sprinted out of the room, shoulders still heaving. Then it hit me. mouth still wide open, not able to believe the volume of fluid this woman's body contained. It was like getting a great big bite of the despair and apathy that permeated this woman's life. I couldn't fucking breathe. My lungs simply refused to pull any more of that stuff in. The anesthesiologist went down next. An ex-NCAA D1 tailback, his 6'2" frame shaking as he threw open the door to the OR suite in an attempt to get more air, letting me glimpse the second nurse still throwing up in the sink outside the door. Another geyser of pus splashed across the front of the surgeon. The YouTube clip of David at the dentist keeps playing in my mind. Is this real life? In all operating rooms everywhere in the world, regardless of socialized or privatized, secular or religious, big or small, there is this one thing the same. Somewhere there is a bottle of peppermint concentrate. Everyone in the department knows where it is, everyone knows what it's for, and everyone prays to their gods that they never have to use it. In times like this, we rub it on the inside of our masks to keep the outside smells at bay long enough to finish the procedure and shower off. I sprinted to our central supply, ripping open the drawer where this vial of ambrosia was kept, and was greeted by an empty fucking box. The bottle had been emptied and not replaced. Somewhere out there was a godless bastard who had used this last bit of peppermint oil and not replaced a single fucking drop of it. To this day, if I figure out who it was, I'll kill them with my bare hands, but not before cramming their head up the colon of every last meth user I can find, just so we're even. I darted back into the room with the next best thing I could find, a vial of mastisol, which is an adhesive rub we use sometimes for bandaging. It's not as good as peppermint, but considering that over 1/3 of the floor was now thoroughly coated in what could easily be mistaken for a combination of bovine afterbirth and maple syrup, we were out of options. I started rubbing as much of the mastisol as I could get on the inside of my mask, just glad to be smelling anything except whatever slimy demon spawn we had just cut out of this woman. The anesthesiologist grabbed the vial next, dousing the front of his mask in it so he could just stand next to the machines long enough to make sure this woman didn't die on the table. It wasn't until later we realized that mastisol can give you a mild high from huffing it like this, but in retrospect it's probably what got us through. By this time the smell had permeated out of our OR suite and down the 40-foot hallway to the front desk where the other nurse still sat, eyes bloodshot and watery, clenching her stomach desperately. Our suite looked like the underground river of ooze from Ghostbusters 2, except dirty. Oh so dirty. I stepped back into the OR suite, not wanting to leave the surgeon by himself in case he genuinely needed help. It was like one of those overly artistic representations of a zombie apocalypse you see on fan forums. Here's this one guy in a blue surgical garb standing nearly ankle deep in lumps of dead tissue, fecal matter, and several litters of syrupy infection. He was performing surgery in the swamp, except the swamps had just come out of this woman's ass and there was no Yoda. He and I didn't say a word for the next 10 minutes as he scraped the inside of the abscess until all of the dead tissue was out, the front of his gown a gruesome mixture of brown and red, his eyes squinted against the stinging vapours originating directly in front of him. I finished my required paperwork as quickly as I could, helped him stuff the recently vacated opening full of gauze, taped this woman's buttocks closed to hold the dressing for as long as possible, woke her up and immediately shipped off to the recovery ward. Until then, I'd only heard of alcohol showers. Turns out 70% of this stuff is about the only thing that can even touch a scent like that once it's soaked into your skin. It takes 4 or 5 bottles to get really clean, but it's worth it. It's probably the only scenario I can honestly endorse drinking a little bit of it too. As we left the locker room, the surgeon and I looked at each other, and he said the only negative sentence I heard him utter in 2.5 years of working together. That was bad. The next morning, the entire department, a fairly large floor within the hospital, still smelled. The housekeepers told me later that it took them nearly an hour to suction up all of the fluid and debris left behind. The OR suite itself was closed off and quarantined for 2 more days just to let the smell finally clear out. I laugh now when I hear recruits to healthcare talk about the worst thing they've seen. You ain't seen shit, kid. G'day mates, it's B-Buster here. So the Beehive is almost reaching a milestone of 50,000 strong, guys. It never ceases to amaze me just how much support you guys all give me and how quickly this channel is growing. Thank you all so much for everything that you're doing for me. I also want to give a huge shout out to Erin Frost for putting together the thumbnail for this video. She's got some amazing talent and has gone above and beyond to assist me here, and so I've provided a link in the description to her Tumblr account and Facebook page so that you guys can go check out her work and show her some love. Once again guys, thank you for all of your support. It's just amazing to see how quickly this channel is growing, and it's all thanks to you guys. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do, and as always guys, make sure you share and like the video, as this is the way you guys support the channel and it helps to continue to grow the channel. And thank you all again, and I'll see you mates in the next video.